I was privileged enough to start with the seminary the second year of its inception. So 1993, I started classes. And I don't know, there may have been 20 of us, if that, in the whole school. And so I had a lot of opportunity to get to learn directly from the professors, not only in class, but outside of class, because it was so small. And beginning in about, say, 1995 or so, I began to travel a little bit with Dr. Geisler and do some seminars with him. So he would do, say, 3/4 of the seminar, and he'd have me do 1/4 of it or so. And then I'd stand up next to him when we would do Q&A. And of course, he would answer most of the tough ones. I'd simply look at him and go, oh, he's got this one. I might handle the easy ones. So I learned a lot just by being in his presence and, having lunch with him and the other professors as well. People like Tom Howe and Wayne Detzler, and of course, Richard Howe. In fact, Richard Howe used to come over to our house in the early days of the seminary and do kind of a skeptics Bible study. We'd invite a few people over who weren't really Christians, but were open. And Richard was really good, as he still is, in talking to anybody about Christianity, about philosophy, about the evidence for Christianity. And so in the early days of the seminary, it was just kind of like a big family. Oh, yeah, I remember him preaching at the Calvary Church when we first got there. In fact, that's where the seminary was. It was at Calvary Church. And of course, when you see Calvary Church for the first time, you're going, wow, look at this place. It's amazing. And so the seminary was part of that because Dr. Ross Rhoads had wanted to start a seminary in the church, and he recruited Dr. Geisler to do that. And so I just remember him preaching, and I remember he was so persuasive in some of his sermons that my dad, who wasn't really all that spiritually interested at the time, actually decided he was going to accept Jesus after Ross Rhoads had preached a sermon. And this must have been, I don't know, 1995 or so. So yeah, that was a kind of a dynamic duo. Ross was the charismatic preacher, and Norm was more of the systematic thinker who told you why Christianity was true, whereas Ross would say, okay, now that you know that it's true, here's what you ought to do with it. I still think that their initial vision of having a seminary in a church was spot on, and it should continue. Because unfortunately, in fact, I was just talking to someone last night who was attending a study I was doing. He wanted to get apologetics in his church, and he was beating his head against the wall because the church didn't seem interested. I mean, in this day and age, when you have to have an answer for the hope that you have, because people are going to dismiss you if you just say, well, the Bible says. Not all people, but the majority culture will just dismiss you if you just say, the Bible says. You have to have a reason for the hope that you have. You have to show them why you think the Bible's true, especially now. And so Ross Rhoads and Norm Geisler, almost 30 years ago, had that vision to combine the church and the seminary, to combine the heart and the mind. And I still think that needs to be done today. And the great thing about Geisler, he would explain an opponent's point of view better than they could explain it, right? And he wouldn't straw man it. He wouldn't make it a caricature of the view. He would actually, what we call steel man it. He would make it even sound better than the opponent could make it sound himself. And after he did that, then he would show the faults in the view. And he was so good at that. He was so good at that in class. I remember taking history of philosophy, and he would go through, here's what Kant believed, and here are the positives of what Kant said, but here are the negatives, right? And he would explain that, say, better than Kant could at the time. So he was really, really good at figuring out the issues that opponents of Christianity were bringing to the table, showing you what they believed, and then showing them why they were false. And all the philosophy that he went through and taught us is so important today, because if you don't understand philosophy, it's really even hard to understand where our culture is today, or how to address the issues that opponents of Christianity bring up. I would say this is a very unique place. There are very few places that teach how to know that Christianity is true and how to share that with others. Very few places, unfortunately. And unfortunately, many people in the church don't even know it exists. Even many pastors don't know it exists because they haven't been taught it. And when they hear the word apologetics, they think, oh, you want to be argumentative. No, I don't want to be argumentative. I just want to show people why the most reasonable point of view is the Christian point of view, why there's evidence for it, why you can know it, and then how you can be accepted into eternity and tell other people about it. Because our purpose here is to know God and to make him known. But a lot of people, if they say, well, I don't think there's a God, well, let me show you why I think there is. And the seminary does that better than any other place I know. It's a very rare place. And so we need more students to come out of it. And that's why the scholarship fund is so important. Hi, I'm Frank Turek. I'm a graduate of Southern Evangelical Seminary, and I want to urge you to give to Celebrating Our Legacy. What is that? It actually will go to fund students directly through scholarship. In other words, the money's not going to anything else but students, so they can go to Southern Evangelical Seminary and acquire a very rare skill that very few people have today, and that is to present the evidence for that Christianity is true in an enticing and persuasive way. So I hope you'll give to Celebrating Our Legacy. Again, 100% of the funds that you give will go to fund students to actually become better ambassadors and apologists for Christ. I hope you'll consider giving. Thanks.